The day they tried to shut down my family's 40-year-old gun range was the same day I discovered just how powerful the First Amendment can be when you know how to use it. $2.3 million. That's what the city council's safety concerns were going to cost me, until I found a loophole so perfect it made their lawyers quit and the mayor issue a public apology. If you're watching this while dealing with your own government overreach nightmare, drop a comment telling me which constitutional amendment you think is most powerful, because I guarantee this story will change your mind about which one really has teeth. My name is Marcus Tank Thompson, and until 6 months ago, I was running what most folks considered the best outdoor shooting range in Millbrook County. Thunder Valley Range had been in my family since 1983, when my father bought 127 acres of rolling hills and pine forest, specifically to create a place where responsible gun owners could practice their marksmanship in a safe, controlled environment. Dad was a Vietnam veteran who believed deeply that the Second Amendment wasn't just about hunting or sport shooting. It was about maintaining the skills and mindset necessary for free citizens to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. He'd seen what happened when governments disarmed their populations, and he was determined that wouldn't happen here. When I inherited the range after Dad's heart attack 3 years ago, it came with more than just property and equipment. It came with a responsibility to continue his mission of promoting safe, responsible firearm ownership and training. We offered everything from basic safety courses for new gun owners to advanced tactical training for law enforcement and military personnel. Our facility was top-notch: 8 outdoor rifle ranges extending out to 600 yards, 4 pistol ranges, a tactical house for close-quarters training, and a classroom building where we conducted safety courses and concealed carry permit classes. We'd trained over 15,000 people in firearm safety over the years, with a perfect safety record, not a single accident requiring medical attention in 4 decades of operation. But success, especially in today's political climate, can make you a target. The trouble started when Millbrook County elected a new mayor, Patricia Hendricks, who ran on a platform of modernizing our community standards and ensuring public safety. What that really meant, as I soon discovered, was systematically eliminating anything that didn't align with her progressive political agenda. Mayor Hendricks had moved to our rural county from Portland 2 years earlier, bringing with her a collection of California transplants who immediately began complaining about everything from our annual rodeo to the fact that local kids still learn to drive on dirt roads. They wanted our county to look more like the suburban paradise they'd left behind, apparently forgetting why they'd fled those places in the first place. The first shot across our bow came in the form of a noise ordinance review targeting our range. Despite the fact that we'd been operating legally for 40 years, suddenly our weekend training sessions were being classified as a public nuisance. Never mind that the nearest neighbor was over half a mile away and had never complained. Never mind that we only operated during daylight hours and observed all federal and state regulations. The writing was on the wall when I attended my first city council meeting after the ordinance was proposed. Mayor Hendricks sat at the head of the council table like she was holding court, flanked by 4 newly elected council members who nodded along with everything she said like bobblehead dolls. The Thunder Valley Range represents an outdated approach to recreation that simply doesn't align with our community's evolving values, she announced during the public comment period, not even bothering to look at me as I sat in the front row. We have families moving here for the peace and tranquility of rural life, not to be subjected to the constant sound of gunfire. I stood up to respond. Ma'am, with respect, my family has been serving this community's needs for 4 decades. We've trained local law enforcement, helped countless citizens exercise their constitutional rights safely, and maintained a perfect safety record. What exactly has changed that makes our operations suddenly incompatible with community values? The mayor's smile was thin and condescending. Mr. Thompson, what's changed is that we now have leadership that prioritizes the well-being of all citizens, not just those who choose to embrace violence as entertainment. The room erupted in murmurs. Several longtime residents stood up to defend our range, but Mayor Hendricks gavelled them down. The decision has been made. The noise ordinance will be amended to restrict recreational firearm discharge to indoor facilities only. Thunder Valley Range has 90 days to comply or cease operations. After the meeting, I was approached by Jim Morrison, a local attorney who'd been coming to our range for target practice for over a decade. "Tank, I've been watching this administration work," he said quietly as we stood in the parking lot. "They've been systematically targeting every business and organization that doesn't fit their vision. The motorcycle club lost their clubhouse lease. The hunting supply store was forced to relocate due to zoning changes. You're not their first target, and you won't be their last." Jim introduced me to others who'd felt the squeeze. Bob Richards, whose family farm was being pressured to sell due to environmental concerns, and Sarah Martinez, whose auto repair shop was facing closure over new aesthetic standards that would cost her $100,000 to implement. "They're playing a long game," Bob explained during an impromptu meeting at the local diner. "Each business or organization they drive out weakens the community's resistance to their changes. Pretty soon, they'll have transformed this place into exactly the kind of suburban cookie-cutter development they left behind." Over the following weeks, I researched every legal avenue to fight the noise ordinance. I hired an acoustic engineer who confirmed that our sound levels were well within legal limits and actually lower than many industrial operations the city had recently approved. I gathered petitions signed by over 800 community members supporting our range. I even offered to install additional sound barriers at my own expense. None of it mattered. The city council voted 5-2 to implement the new noise restrictions, effectively outlawing outdoor shooting ranges within county limits. When I pointed out that this seemed to target our specific business, Mayor Hendricks responded that the ordinance applied equally to everyone, apparently ignoring the fact that we were the only outdoor range in the county. The financial implications were devastating. Converting to an indoor facility would require demolishing our existing ranges and constructing a completely new building, estimated at $2.3 million. Even if I could secure that kind of financing, the indoor space would reduce our capacity by 80%, making the business financially unviable. But the real gut punch came during the appeals process. While reviewing the city's justification for the ordinance change, I discovered that the primary complaint had come from the mayor herself, filed just 2 days after she'd toured the property of a major residential development company that wanted to build a luxury housing subdivision on the land adjacent to our range. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't about noise or safety. It was about clearing the way for development that would benefit the mayor's political allies and campaign contributors. That night, I sat in Dad's old office at the range, surrounded by photos of the thousands of people we'd trained over the years. Law enforcement officers, military veterans, concerned parents wanting to protect their families, young adults learning responsibility and discipline through marksmanship. All of it would disappear because a politician wanted to reshape our community to match her vision. I was about to close up when I noticed something I'd somehow overlooked for years. In the corner of Dad's desk was a small wooden cross, hand-carved and weathered with age. Underneath it was a letter I'd never seen before, written in Dad's distinctive handwriting. "Tank," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you're probably facing some kind of challenge to our mission here. I want you to know that this place was always about more than just shooting. It was about bringing people together around shared values, personal responsibility, respect for others, the importance of being prepared to protect what matters most." The letter continued, "I've been thinking about the future of this place, and I realize that what we do here is really a form of ministry. We teach people to be responsible guardians of their families and communities. We create a space where people can come together regardless of their backgrounds and learn from each other. We preserve and pass on traditions that connect us to our heritage and our values. If anyone ever tries to shut us down, remember that the First Amendment protects religious freedom even more strongly than the Second Amendment protects gun rights. Maybe there's wisdom in that priority." I read the letter 3 times before the full implications hit me. Dad had essentially outlined a legal strategy that could protect our operation using religious freedom protections instead of gun rights arguments. The next morning, I called Jim Morrison and asked him to research the legal precedents for religious institutions and firearm activities. What he found was fascinating. "Tank, There's actually a strong legal tradition supporting religious organizations' rights to maintain shooting sports and training programs, Jim explained over coffee the next day. The Amish have been exempt from various regulations because shooting sports are part of their cultural and religious traditions. Several Christian denominations have successfully argued that marksmanship training is a form of stewardship, teaching responsible guardianship of community and family. Jim had done his homework. He showed me case after case where religious organizations had successfully defended their right to operate shooting ranges, conduct firearms training, and even manufacture ammunition as part of their religious mission. The key was establishing a genuine religious foundation that went beyond just trying to circumvent regulations. The question is, Jim continued, do you have a sincere religious basis for what you do here, or would this just be a legal maneuver? I thought about Dad's letter, about the countless conversations I'd had with customers over the years who talked about their responsibility to protect their families, about the sense of community and shared values that had always been central to our range culture. Jim, I think we've been operating as a religious organization all along. We just never called it that. Over the next week, I dove deep into research about the intersection of firearms training and religious practice. What I discovered amazed me. Throughout American history, churches and religious organizations had played crucial roles in firearms education and community defense preparation. The early colonial churches often stored community weapons and coordinated militia training. Many denominations had explicit teachings about the responsibility of the righteous to protect the innocent. I also reached out to Dr. Samuel Wright, a theology professor at the State University who specialized in American religious history. Dr. Wright was initially skeptical of my inquiry, but became genuinely interested as I explained the philosophical and spiritual dimensions of what we did at Thunder Valley. Mr. Thompson, what you're describing aligns closely with several established theological traditions, Dr. Wright told me during our meeting at his office. The concept of righteous stewardship includes the responsibility to protect one's community and family. Many Christian denominations have long held that learning to responsibly handle weapons is part of being a good steward of God's gifts. Dr. Wright helped me understand that our approach to firearms training, emphasizing safety, responsibility, respect for life, and community service, was entirely consistent with religious teachings about stewardship and protection of the innocent. The early American churches understood that freedom of religion was meaningless without the ability to defend that freedom, Dr. Wright explained. That's why so many colonial churches maintained armories and conducted militia training. They saw no contradiction between spiritual development and practical preparation for protecting their communities. With Dr. Wright's guidance, I began developing the theological foundation for what would become the Church of Righteous Stewardship. The core principles were simple but profound. First, stewardship. We are called to be responsible guardians of our families, communities, and freedoms. Second, preparedness. Wisdom requires preparation for challenges, including the ability to protect the innocent. Third, responsibility. True freedom comes with the obligation to act responsibly and help others do the same. Fourth, community. We are stronger when we support each other in developing these virtues. And fifth, service. Our skills and knowledge should be used to serve others and strengthen our community. The beauty of this foundation was that it perfectly aligned with what we had always been doing at Thunder Valley. We weren't changing our mission. We were simply recognizing and formalizing the spiritual dimension that had always been present. But I knew that establishing a church wasn't just about theology. It required legal structure, documentation, and credible religious practices. Jim Morrison connected me with Rebecca Chen, an attorney who specialized in religious organization law. The good news, Rebecca explained during our first meeting, is that religious freedom protections are some of the strongest rights in American law. The bad news is that you'll need to demonstrate that this is a sincere religious belief system, not just a clever legal maneuver. Rebecca walked me through the requirements for establishing a legitimate religious organization. We would need articles of incorporation, bylaws, a clear statement of beliefs, regular religious services, and evidence of genuine spiritual community. The key test, Rebecca warned, is sincerity. Courts don't judge whether religious beliefs are correct or conventional, but they do examine whether they're genuinely held. You'll need to demonstrate that this isn't just a business trying to avoid regulations. Over the next month, I worked with Dr. Wright and Rebecca to develop the formal structure of the Church of Righteous Stewardship. We drafted articles of incorporation that clearly stated our religious mission. We created bylaws that governed both our spiritual practices and our stewardship training programs. Most importantly, we developed a regular schedule of religious services that integrated traditional worship with teachings about responsible stewardship. The transformation of Thunder Valley Range into the Church of Righteous Stewardship was remarkably natural. Our classroom became our sanctuary, decorated with symbols representing the 5 principles of our faith. Our training programs became stewardship education, teaching the same safety and marksmanship skills but within an explicit framework of religious responsibility. We began holding Sunday services that combined traditional elements, prayer, music, and spiritual reflection with practical teachings about preparedness, community service, and responsible guardianship. The response from our existing members was overwhelmingly positive. Many said it gave deeper meaning to what they'd always felt about responsible gun ownership. Dr. Wright agreed to serve as our theological advisor, helping to ensure that our religious practices were substantive and authentic. We also attracted several new members who were drawn to our unique approach to integrating spiritual development with practical life skills. 3 months after the noise ordinance went into effect, I submitted our application for recognition as a religious organization to both the state and the IRS. I also sent a formal letter to Mayor Hendricks and the City Council, informing them that Thunder Valley Range was now operating as the Church of Righteous Stewardship, a legally recognized religious organization exempt from the noise ordinance under the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, RLUIPA. The mayor's response was swift and predictable. Within a week, I received a cease and desist order claiming that our religious conversion was fraudulent and that we were still subject to the noise ordinance. The city also announced plans to investigate our tax-exempt status and threatened criminal charges for operating an unlicensed business. But I was ready for this fight. Rebecca had prepared a comprehensive legal response that demonstrated the sincerity of our religious beliefs, the legitimacy of our practices, and the strong legal precedents protecting religious organizations from discriminatory enforcement. The real turning point came when the story hit the local media. Sarah Williams, a reporter for the county newspaper, had been following the city's campaign against local businesses. When she learned about our transformation into a church, she recognized it as a fascinating story about religious freedom, government overreach, and creative problem-solving. Sarah's initial article, titled "Local Gun Range Becomes Church to Fight City Restrictions," was picked up by the state news network and eventually went national. Within days, we were receiving calls from religious freedom organizations, gun rights groups, and constitutional law experts offering support. The American Civil Liberties Union, not typically associated with gun rights, sent a letter to the city pointing out that our case raised serious religious freedom issues. The Institute for Justice, a libertarian legal organization, offered to represent us pro bono if the city continued its harassment. Even the Southern Baptist Convention issued a statement supporting our right to practice our religious beliefs without government interference. Mayor Hendricks found herself facing a public relations nightmare. What had started as a simple effort to shut down a gun range had become a national story about religious persecution and government overreach. The city's legal team was fielding calls from constitutional law professors questioning the city's position. The pressure intensified when Dr. Wright published an article in a prominent theology journal explaining the historical and theological basis for our approach to stewardship training. His academic credentials and detailed historical analysis made it impossible to dismiss our religious foundation as a mere legal convenience. The Church of Righteous Stewardship represents a return to a fundamental understanding of religious responsibility that was central to American faith communities for centuries. Dr. Wright wrote, Their integration of spiritual development with practical preparation for protecting family and community is both historically grounded and theologically sound. As the legal battle escalated, something unexpected happened. Other businesses and organizations facing pressure from the mayor's administration began reaching out to us. Bob Richards, the farmer being pressured to sell his land, asked if agricultural stewardship could be part of our religious mission. Sarah Martinez wondered if teaching automotive skills could be considered vocational ministry. We began to realize that our model could be adapted to protect other community institutions that were under attack. The Church of Righteous Stewardship expanded its mission to include various forms of practical stewardship education, farming, mechanics, construction, and other skills that strengthened community self-reliance. 6 months after our transformation, the city's legal position became untenable. Faced with mounting legal costs, negative publicity, and the prospect of a federal civil rights lawsuit, Mayor Hendricks's administration agreed to enter mediation. The mediation session was held at the county courthouse, with representatives from the city, our legal team, and a federal mediator. The city's attorney opened by arguing that our religious conversion was a sham designed to circumvent legitimate regulations. Rebecca Chen responded with a detailed presentation of our religious practices, theological foundation, and community service activities. She showed photos of our Sunday services, described our charitable activities, and presented testimonials from members about the spiritual impact of our stewardship teachings. Your Honor, Rebecca concluded, the Church of Righteous Stewardship is not a gun range pretending to be a church. It's a religious community that includes firearms training as one aspect of a comprehensive approach to righteous stewardship. The city's attempt to shut down our religious practices simply because they include activities the mayor disapproves of is exactly the kind of religious persecution that the First Amendment was designed to prevent. The federal mediator, Judge Patricia Coleman, was clearly impressed by our documentation and preparation. I've reviewed the materials submitted by both parties, she said, and I find substantial evidence that the Church of Righteous Stewardship is a legitimate religious organization with sincere beliefs and practices. The city's position that they can determine which religious activities are genuine raises serious constitutional concerns. Faced with the prospect of a federal ruling against them, the city agreed to a settlement. They would recognize our status as a religious organization, exempt us from the noise ordinance, and pay our legal fees. In exchange, we agreed to certain voluntary measures, limiting our loudest activities to specific hours, providing advance notice of large events, and maintaining our existing safety protocols. But the real victory went beyond just saving our operation. The Church of Righteous Stewardship had become a model for other communities facing similar challenges. We received inquiries from gun ranges, farms, workshops, and other organizations around the country who were interested in our approach to protecting community institutions through religious freedom principles. The mayor's political career didn't survive the controversy. The backlash against her administration's heavy-handed tactics led to a recall election, and she was replaced by a candidate who promised to respect the community's traditional values and constitutional rights. 1 year after our transformation, the Church of Righteous Stewardship was thriving. Our Sunday services regularly drew over 200 people, combining worship with practical teachings about various forms of stewardship. Our firearms training programs had expanded to include law enforcement agencies from 3 counties. We'd also added programs in agricultural stewardship, emergency preparedness, and vocational skills training. Most importantly, we'd preserved the mission that Dad had started 40 years earlier while adding a deeper spiritual dimension that enriched everything we did. The integration of faith and practical skills created a stronger, more resilient community that was better prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The transformation taught me something profound about the relationship between different constitutional rights. The Second Amendment protects our right to keep and bear arms, but the First Amendment protects our right to live according to our deepest beliefs and values. When those rights work together, they create a protection that's stronger than either one alone. As I stood in our sanctuary one Sunday morning, Looking out at families learning together about responsibility, preparedness, and community service, I thought about Dad's letter and his wisdom about the priority of the First Amendment. He'd understood something that took me years to fully appreciate. The right to practice our beliefs is meaningless without the freedom to live according to those beliefs. And the freedom to protect what we value is meaningless without a clear understanding of why those things are worth protecting. Today, the Church of Righteous Stewardship continues to grow and serve our community. We've helped establish similar organizations in 12 other states, providing a model for communities that want to preserve their values and traditions while respecting the rule of law. Mayor Hendricks moved back to California last year, apparently finding rural life too challenging for her taste. The new mayor attends our services occasionally and has become a strong supporter of our community service programs. If you're facing your own battle against government overreach, remember that the Constitution provides multiple avenues for protecting your rights. Sometimes the most powerful defense comes from an unexpected direction. The key is understanding that our rights work together to protect not just what we do, but who we are and what we believe. The Church of Righteous Stewardship stands as proof that when government tries to restrict our fundamental freedoms, the solution isn't always to fight harder on the same battlefield. Sometimes it's to change the game entirely by showing that what we're fighting for is deeper and more important than any single issue or regulation. And if you're watching this video while dealing with bureaucrats who think they know better than you do about how to live your life, remember, they may have the power to change the rules, but they can't change the Constitution. Sometimes the most powerful response to tyranny is to remind everyone which rights really matter most.